I'm rich. I build stuff. As for what? Well, I'm kind of torn between some choices. So, here goes. So I've got the model that I was doing before I decided to take a little break from it, and that is the B-17 that I'm modifying the bejesus out of. So, and then there is the Dreadnought that I just feel is like its spirit has been calling to me to finish it. And then there's the Camaro model I got, for my wife as another little kind of quick one-shot. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip this coin twice, alright? Way I see it, if they're different, I'm going to do the B-17. If it's both heads, I'm going to do the Dreadnought. And if it's both tails, I'm doing the Camaro. Here we go. Okay. Heads. So it's either the Dreadnought or the B-17. Well, what do you know? Looks like we're completing the Dreadnought today. Let's get her started. And starting we go by pulling it out of the box and playing with it a little bit and just looking at everything, how it all lines in, and then watching it all fall apart like I did the last time I threw a fit about it. Also staring at my bald spot, apparently. Other staple of these videos. Not as so much a staple, but something I had to do quite a bit of was sorting this superstructure piece out quite a bit, because it just, you see that little green bit of interior there? It just wasn't quite fitting it good, so I had to keep working with it. It also just wasn't making a good seam to, glue and paint with, just to have a realistic looking superstructure, even though to fit with the rest of the boat. Speaking of fitting with the rest of the boat, that was me sanding down or filing down the sides of the deck so to fit good into the hull. Seems I solved the interior superstructure problem, kind of. But the boat, I never quite got it to fit right. You'll see later I actually do... this affects how I build the model later there. Anyhow, so as you can see, I also, in an attempt to try and fix that problem, I also added magnets, and that was a piece of thin steel sheet. And here's the plans. So you'd think I'd be done with these things, right? The thing is, these plans, I looked at them and then I realized I should have recognized this earlier. I built the interior from these plans. I could build exterior bits like the bridge too. And that's what I'm using this book for here now. Yeah, I rambled on in normal time, but we can edit some of this out. So hopefully I've edited some of this out, but here's me working with the calipers and then working with math and graphing paper. And the reason I do all that is to learn how long I need to make certain dimensions to make the bases of the bridge. And yeah, since I'm actually building stuff now, one, the music can change, and two, you can see me actually cutting up some plastic, because that's how we more building it out of here. So I cut a piece of plastic to start, with the size, and then once I get that is the right size to start with, I go ahead and start making more cuts and more traces, drawing out the shape that I want this to be onto the plastic itself, and then making cuts as cleanly as I can. Not with a jeweler's coping saw, but with the actual knife here. Not that I couldn't use a jeweler's coping saw, but the edges would probably come out a lot fuzzier. But as you can see, not only do I have the bridge there, I also start adding stuff to it. And what I'm doing is, this doesn't go to the top for walls. Excuse me. Or rather, it goes to the structure that's beneath that bridge that's holding it up above stuff. And once I get that initial bit for the bridge, I start working on the actual roof section of it. You should see a close-up of it momentarily, along with a close-up of the actual photo etch stuff that I use for the side walls of it. First, though, I've got to cut things to size, and then lay them out with the pencil and everything like I did before. And there I am, cutting things up, and then eventually you'll see, at some point, there we go, now I'm gluing things in place. So there we go, there's more superstructure stuff that I've glued into position. And then I go ahead and you'll see me work on making sure that it fits onto the model. And once it does, you'll see that I've put it into my kind of third hand tool, along with starting to put the yeah, there it is. There's the photo etch bridge right there. Then of course I put everything together, and that includes putting the roof on top of the bridge and the little photo etch kind of front window section that's extra. So there we go. Smoothing over edges, making sure things are cut to the appropriate size to match everything else. And there we go. And now you see I glue it in place and it's been painted gray. And I'm gluing some other things to its sides, which is the wings of the bridge actually had a fence thing that also had canvas in between the stanchions, I guess, or something like that. So I modeled that with gray paper here. I paint the paper gray after I'm done super gluing it into position. And that actually works really good. Then I use the paint to just cover up any issues with some of the wood areas. And then, as you saw, I super glued some steel sheet to places on the model, and then started fiddling with other bits for the model that were photo etched to super glue into place. Some of it will be fences. That's actually a lifeboat cabin. And with all this playing, well, guess what happens? Something infuriating. Working on the thing, and then it just slips, tips, everything spills out. That's it. I have met my maximum stress level today. Time to go drink 2 handles. I did not drink 2 handles, don't worry. That would actually put me down permanently. Anywho, there I am. So I did a bit of milling out with the Dremel cutter of one of the interior wall sections I did before starting to paint up that back crow's nest thing and putting that boat on there. So yeah, I do a lot with painting over areas of the hull or superstructure that had previously been covered with something else or had paint taken off and all the handling to get things assembled. You'll notice that I mixed the gray out of a black and white because I don't have some Vallejo standard gray for the brush paints. I could mix gray paint for the Tamiya's if I need to, but I have a few Tamiya grays. At least for the, so for like airbrushing stuff I could. But that's besides the point. So, yep, there I am. Again, gray stuff just to cover up bits of unpainted stuff on the boat superstructure. And also on the turrets themselves. And you'll see me putting both a oil wash and a dry brush onto each of those turrets through this next bit. Also, you see me painting them with, the airbrush just to get a good base coat on everybody. So here's the turret, and this is the one that actually comes apart and lets you see an interior for the turret. And I put the orangey yellow onto the rafts. I know it's not that color in real life; it wouldn't be because it'd be really obvious to see. But I figure it's a nice little detail. As you can see, that detailing I mentioned for the guns of dry brush and oil wash is being done here. And after that comes finally priming up this hull, getting it good. So first I put a coat of the regular primer on, hoping if I see any big imperfections. I also hit the bases of the fences. And then I take up a new technique for my painting base coats where it'll be a 2-layer base coat. The first layer is a mix of the primer and the paint I want to use mixed with the thinner. And then the next is just my standard paint and thinner mix. And this has held up pretty good. Good enough that I was actually able to get this shot right here. You know what? I had to do this. I had to share. Come on, baby. There's a good tapey tape. There's a good boy. Don't worry, I did not sell my soul to some eldritch abomination in order to be able to pull that tape off. Not to my knowledge, anyway. Anywho, so there's me adding fences to the rim of the boat, that hull there. And the reason I add them to the boat hull is so that they don't have to go on and off constantly with the not so evenly fitting deck. And also, the idea is to have it kind of obfuscate that joint between deck and boat to help, make things look a little more whole and aligned, even though they're not. And as you can see, there's also going to be a part where I'm adding some sections of the fence where it's bending away from everything. I don't think it's here because I think I was also adding to the front the superstructure fences. Yep, that's what that is. But there's parts of the fence that I had to actually cut and make shorter in order to fit onto the boat hull itself. So there's that. And again, just more and more of the fitting on the fitting on the kind of front of West Forecastle fence railings. And then after this, I think this is the part where looks like, yep, it's the part where we add the kind of the back flagstaff and the kind of bowsprit as it's a front flagstaff. And I also added the second mast to this thing because there was two masts. The second one I made out of some copper wire and some just plastic rod that I had that was thin enough. And once I got that in position, I started adding some other bobs and bits like davits and cranes and whatnot to various bits of the hull. So for that back crow's nest, it had a few cranes attached to it as well. So I've added them there along with the roof. I tried using the good plastic glue to hold things together. It wasn't working. Probably because since this is already painted up or it's multiple materials that wouldn't be compatible with solvent glue. I'll just use this as time to give you one PSA before I give you another, besides cleaning up edges and mold flash with a sharp edge of a razor. Also to use the super glue will work when the solvent glue doesn't. Solvent glue doesn't go through paint. There we go, that's what I was trying to say. But this is rigging, and super glue I used for that because, well, it was the rigging line versus the painted plastic, and that's not going to stick with the solvent glue. But it will require you to use tweezers.
Alright, so y'all are probably wondering, what is this purple thing? Wasn't the song about a yellow submarine? Well, no. Yeah, it's a submarine. It's not the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. But what this is a kind of representation I was able to make. I did it up in that Onshape program I've used, but I've decided, you know what? I'm going to get a copy of that SolidWorks for Makers. It's not that expensive, and well, even though it'd be great to do a lot of stuff, with open source tech, things. Gonna be honest, SolidWorks having been my main driver for years and years and years, probably gonna be better for me as a choice. So this I just 3D printed with that new 3D printer I got a while ago. Finally got around to using it, and yeah. So this is just a model of that U29, SMU-29, I think it was. The one ship that the Dreadnought actually took out. It was a submarine, and it took it out by ramming. I think this is the only time a battleship deliberately killed a submarine. I think it was also the only time a battleship deliberately rammed a submarine. Yes, that like attempt to use the bow for the explosive finish actually happened, evidently.
Isn't history fun? Also, ramming is how I think the Olympic got a submarine kill. And apparently also tried to kill the Hawk. I think that was the cruiser that, accidentally hit the Olympic. Yeah, history is full of fun coinkydinks like that. My channel, on the other hand, is full of little things like me using tweezers to fix little bits to the ship here with, again, super glue, because super glue don't go through paint. Speaking of paint, I also start painting some foil to try to make flags. I would have tried to put a fun secret message onto the rigging, but this is too labor intensive and the rigging broke when I was doing it, so I gave up.
So then the string comes off because I guess I put it under too much stress trying to put little flags on it.
Yeah, so you'll see that purple sub. We'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, I go on and I'm just again using super glue and what such to put things onto the hull, and then I go ahead and I paint the propellers. That's what I'm working with this copper thing now. Problem with the Tamiya paint bottles though is that the paint will get into the threads and gunk it up. So that's why you saw me cleaning the threads with the razor there. Sorry, the scalpel, whatever. Then I go ahead and I do my mix with paint and primer, and then put the paint layer on. And then I add some bits to the purple submarine I created, to represent things, not just the periscope and the two masts that they have, but also those like stabilizer fin things to make it dive and raise. And then I add some more bits to the hull, and also work out some of the rigging. Here I am putting on the propellers. Somehow I get them to stick with the Tamiya cement this time. And then I put on the, then I go ahead and I put on the turret. And then I finally add some details and tape to the submarine. And I discuss why I do that in a non-time-lapse segment. Okay, the heck with it. I'll just explain it here and edit out that part, save us all some time. So yeah, basically, I saw all the cool kids doing it to make a effect where you raise some areas with a layer of initial primer, and then you prime over everything else after removing the masking tape, and that creates a bunch of ridges that looks like a kind of paneling for small scales like this. I've tried the effect. I really liked it. That's also why I did this kind of effect on the deck, because I wanted to make a deck-like effect. And you can see me just doing bits of it all the way through here. And after I add all the tape, I go ahead and start priming it. And I prime it blue. I was thinking of doing an initial shading. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm taking part of this off with the masking tape. You see me here doing that, and I get those raised edges, and they're not blue because I did following layers in gray, make my life easier. Then after I finally take it off and have the raised bits, I do a full covering gray. And then I go ahead and I do something completely different.
Hey, this is the part of the Dreadnought episode that I might put as just a separate thing because it's me dicking around with wood. Well, if you're proud of something, you might as well display it properly, right? So I figured I'd make a little kind of wood box to mount the book in and maybe, have like a nice little inset diorama or something for it. But that means I should probably, being this YouTube, I should probably model the good behavior instead of just joking about, being blind and not because I didn't wear safety glasses. I'm going to put on safety glasses. Okay, here's your PSA. Not these. This is for chemistry, okay? Splashes of acid. Hey, your face will be gone, but at least you'll still have eyes. That's also why they have face shields. No, you need impact-rated glasses for this kind of work. So I'm going to go grab some, and you're just going to wait in, I guess we're going to call it null space.
Okay, so as you can see, I work on the a piece of wood trying to cut it so it'll make nice, sections that I can go ahead and put that kind of fancy, what nowadays quite mortise and tenon, but it's something on those lines. You know how they have like the one tooth kind of fits into another end? I was going to go for this effect. I had limited success in it, but honestly, it wasn't really working out. I should have gotten better tools from the get-go than this to do it. But it took me trying to realizing that I couldn't score the acrylic that I got to do the resin mold for the, have it in a C. That made it so I was, that's what pushed me to go ahead and get myself a table saw. Once I got a table saw, I was able to do a different joint at the ends where I had that kind of 45-degree cut to make the boxes. I was also able to cut things called dados. Those are the lines you see in the wood pieces here that I'm currently chasing with a chisel. And that way I can fit pieces of plywood that are cut to a good size into the kind of drawer box thing. Not only to serve as a lid or a base internally, but also if I wanted to do drawers. And I had thought about it. I could have tried to do pieces of plywood as sides of drawer walls. But I ended up not doing it because it was going to be too complicated. Or not too complicated, just it'd be a lot of time for not a whole lot of looks. And being honest, I kind of wanted to get this project over and done with. Get it done-itis, I guess. Still, it didn't come out too bad. The shelves did look good. I asked the wife what she thought, and she said, yeah, it looks good without, drawers. So that's what I did. And at least as you can see here, these pieces fit much better to each other. It also clamped a lot easier together when I learned how to use that ratchet strap, but then I lost one of those corner nibs. The struggles of life, am I right? Anywho, then I go ahead and I get to the acrylic. And as you can see, I've nicely cut this up now because, well, I had a table saw. And then I just chased down all the edges with the scalpel before going ahead and making sure things line up their good lengths. And I'm using the lines on my cutting mat to align the pieces of acrylic together just as good as I can visually. I end up growing some brain cells and realizing I ought to have some kind of fixturing for these corner bits, and I end up creating some 3D printed pieces, which we're going to see after a little bit more of me futzing around with the tape right here. And as you can see, I glue it in. And I use the, that's not glue, sorry, that's silicone. I found that makes a waterproof bond, sort of, in acrylic. And it's not super strong a bond. It's not like if I were using actual acrylic adhesive. So this works pretty good for what I'm trying to do. Although the first test fails, that's what you see me pouring water in there. I figure if it holds water, it holds resin.
Alright, so maybe this will be an intro section, maybe it won't, but I figured I'd show the completed model in all its glory before risking everything for greatness.
Greatness is worth risking things for. Here we go. I take off the top. Dun 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 dun. So, and then I go ahead and I take apart the turret that I had made so you could look at it being a kind of taken apart turret. And then you're going to see me spin this thing around a few times as I show the interior pieces. I take them out and I spin it around again. I also took this opportunity to take some pictures to put up on Imager, just, you know, share it in a couple places. And, but yeah, full interior. The HMS Dreadnought with an interior. I did this, and I wanted to kind of capture it in time so that if the resin mucked up the boat somehow, or just really did bad things, that I'd be able to have proof that it got done, and something to kind of show people and just share it. But, thankfully, as we're going to see, the resin actually worked really good. But that's not quite here or there. Now we go on to the second pour test I did after sealing up the mold with superglue.
Alright, yesterday we failed this test, so let's see if today is a little better. If it'll hold water, it'll hold resin. What's that? Why does that movie go? If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a bull.
And also, in a moment, I try and dodge a bullet. You'll see the blurred part of the screen. That was just my wallet showing up. Got caught in the shot. But what I just did here was trying to, do a bit of final fixturing to get that boat into place. I figured I'd try to, secure it from above, add some wires, and some putty to hold it in place, and then pour in the resin. But I had a thought, you'll see me do it a bit further. There's that blurring I told you about where my wallet is. But yeah, I mixed the resin, I mixed some inks into it. I should have mixed more ink, but live and learn, I suppose. That was kind of the only real big error that I had in doing this. So I call it a smashing success. But you'll see me pouring in the resin, and yeah, I do the vacuum suction bit off camera, but that's okay. So yeah, either way though, that boat floats, because it's a boat. So I figured just let it float in the sea of resin, maybe put some stuff to weigh it in. And I thought it was going to stay in that reasonably centered area, but it ended up drifting toward the side. But it still came out good. You'll see it later at the end of this. There I go, pouring in the resin. Should have probably realized it would have been better darker then, but well, too late. Whatever. Yep, there I go. Realizing it's a boat. It floats.
Alright, now there's some little edge issues with these corners kind of bowing down like that I'm going to have to think about how to handle. But overall, for a first time doing this sort of thing, amazing. This is just beautiful. Yes. I like this I am actually very satisfied. I've got some things I'm going to have to tweak and poke and prod, but overall, fantastic. Yes. This makes me proud of myself here. Okay, enough blizzing myself up. I'm going to go downstairs now and I'm going to work on some other bits related to this project.
Alright, and now with the actual, resin diorama in a good place, I attempted a previous thing of not using quite the right tools to make the front piece of my better drawers. But that didn't work so good, so I had to take the previous attempt and use it as a jig to make the next version. So you'll see me, I'm cutting the, beveled sides, and then I use the different parts of that initial run, not only to cut the next board to the appropriate width, but also that I use it to fixture different things, tell me where the, how deep to cut dados, etc., where to cut dados. And after quite a bit of this work, including the chasing of these cuts with the chisel, I do end up actually with something that I can put on a router table. Now the router table, it's gonna take a while for me to get used to this. I had to do quite a bit of fiddling with it, trying to counteract the fact that it wants to throw the, spin the, piece of wood around like a helicopter. And yeah, that made it so these cuts, while much more even than the skill saw cuts of the prior attempt, still weren't very even. I'll have to do a lot more practice with this in the future. Also maybe get it a more firm base to work with. But speaking of firm base, these angle pieces for the corners of my little box thing, they were fitting good, so I go ahead and I glue them together. I also put in one of the pieces of plywood, the bottom piece, and I super glue the edges of that. And I do all that so that'll kind of hold itself together as I start working on assembling the whole box. And you'll see me eventually get all the sides and glue on, all the shelf pieces in place. You see, there we go. Yep. And once that's in, I go ahead and, I work on the actual diorama. I use UV resin just to get the waves of the sea in the wake of the boat and everything as best I can. The UV light, I guess, is running a little lower on power than maybe I'd like. But I use that to emulate the swell of the sea. And once after a bit of, futzing with it and checking it out, I gave it a first run and saw that it was still, not the happiest, so it was still sticky, so I went ahead and I did another whole big round of curing it. And then when it was reasonably cured, I put the Woodland Scenics water effects onto the tops of those waves, both to accentuate the waves themselves and to add that ripple that the sea always has. Like even if it's a sea of glass, it's really not because of those little tiny waves. I was trying to emulate that with this. And it actually does a pretty good job. Also a pretty good job came out was the wood base for it. I finished gluing it up. I add the front plate glue as well as the glue to both the upper little shelf piece and the very top of the whole setup. I also go and find a box. After clamping things in place front to back and side to side, I go ahead, I add that glue, and then I find a box to weigh it down. Looking somewhere, find it. There we go. And lastly, I finish off the model with some dry brushing. So that's why, and just so you can see it better, I turn off the light. That also lets me see things better. And then I think, well, it's not really helping that much, so I just flip the light back on. So yeah, there it is. Final dry brushing that accentuates the tops of the waves, makes it look a bit more, in my eyes, realistic. But yeah, it came out. I'm going to ogle about how great it came out in just a moment as the ending of this vid. And here you see me, the final assembly, the final checks, besides some straightening out the edges of this resin. I'm putting in all these pieces. A fence breaks on the boat itself, so I got to adjust the pieces as I'm putting them in. I also have the super glue in case one of the interior things really breaks and I got to fix it. So I'm putting it in, bit by bit. And, final set of decks in, the superstructure deck in. Still gives me a bit of trouble, so I put it in the top and then put the top down. And then once the top's down and it's all kind of slid in, I realized that the fencing is not being my friend, so I adjusted. That's what the fancy work there with the scalpel was. And then I put in the turret and it's done.
All right. Guess this is the part where I say a few words. So, this was and always will be a learning project. All my models in the future are going to be better for it. And the Bismarck model, when I do eventually get to it, whatever century that is going to be a lot better for it. I guess it's time to make an outro. So, without further ado, I'm Rich, I build stuff, and time for the YouTube outro because I can't really think of anything that hasn't been said except this was a great learning project and I look forward to applying the skills next time that I've learned in the future. So, YouTube dance time. Like, share, subscribe. Hooray! Peace out.